All right, guys, let's go to one of my favorite topics: babyface or heel. Now, for those who may not know what babyface heel means in wrestling terminology, babyface means good guy hero, heel means bad guy villain, tweener, someone in between babyface or heel. So I came up with a list of athletes or celebrities, and myself and BRF and Champ are going to decide whether they're babyface, heel, or tweener. First one, Ben Simmons.
Whoa. Uh, golly, that's hard. That is
I say
hard.
heel.
I'd say he's a tweener. The thing
Me
is,
too. Me too. Go. You
I'd
go
say
first,
he's
champ.
a
Me
tweener.
too.
I'll say he's a tweener, man. Ben Simmons is a tweener. You because your heart goes out to him because it was the Nick Anderson effect on him. It was a Nick Anderson effect all over again. He just did not want to go to the free throw line anymore. And he was doing everything he could to avoid it. He got exposed. And it's just like, and then on top of that, you add the injuries along with it, and he just got exposed. Did he handle it correctly? At times, no. Because he always talking about, I'm going to prove it this year. I'm going to prove it this year. And now I'm 37 years old and we still looking for you to prove it. So, I mean, that's the thing. Your heart goes out to him because I believe that not to mention, I believe had he worked on his game and saw where the game was going, he would have been unstoppable. Remember, they was calling him the Fresh Prince at one time. They called LeBron James the King, and they was calling him the Fresh Prince. And at one point, they was calling for LeBron James to come there and say, complete the process. It was going to be him, Joel Embiid, and LeBron. They was talking about completing the process. And people were talking about how he would have stunted the growth of Ben Simmons. So he did a lot of great things when he was on top of his game. But the thing is, when those injuries, him not working on his free throws, him not working on his three-point shot, seeing where the game was going at that point in time, and like I said, the way he handled some of those things, it makes him a tweener. Because guess what? It all started from those injuries. And it just seems like whoosh. Like I said, it was Nick Anderson all over again. Everybody knows that for Nick Anderson, the beginning of the end of his career was the 95 NBA Finals when he missed 4 straight free throws. Everybody knows that. For Ben Simmons, it was when he just did not want to go to the line. He just didn't attack the basket with the same intensity. He didn't want to go to the free throw line. And he didn't work on his game in the offseason in order to improve his three-point shot. And every year you was talking about how he was going to improve, but yet they never made it. And that was the beginning. If you really want me to be honest, ever since he left, they've been trying to hold the process together with glue and duct tape because they just been trying to recapture it. But yeah, I'd say he's a tweener, not just because he did a lot of great things when he was healthy. But when you start to decline in your health-wise, you start declining in your game, it brings out the worst in you. And I think there was injuries and him not wanting to go to the free throw line and stuff like that, him being overly passive, and people knew the reason why. That caused for him to have a lot of these emotional breakdowns and a lot of the things that you really shouldn't have. And I'm going to just be real. The fans did not show any mercy on Ben Simmons. They didn't show no mercy on him.
Champ, don't look no further than Broad.
They had
We love Broad's our guy. I mean, if you ask Broad a question about Ben Simmons, he's gonna say fuck Ben Simmons.
Yeah. As harsh as that may sound, but yeah, they didn't show him no mercy because, like I said, they knew the reason. We knew the reason why he was being overly passive, and you started asking yourself, well, I'm trying to keep my words clean. Well, dude, did you work on your?
You already said shit on the air, so you might as well say it again.
The Samuel Jackson word was about to come out, but we don't want that here. Yeah, we don't want that here. It's gonna see. Well, dude, did you even attempt to work on your game this offseason? Did you even attempt to work on your free throws? Did you even attempt to work on your 3-point shot? Or was this
videos
all?
of him doing that?
Yeah, but look, man, I'm gonna just be real. Look, look. Let me be real. Look, let's be real. I see girls in the gym doing that shit every single day. They bending all over, they doing all this, and you ain't doing nothing in that damn gym. I see it every day. It's all the show. They got their look. I've been working on my glutes. I'm like, okay, and you still look the same 3 months from now. It's all the show. You see people do that in the gym all the time. You see people, what we used to call it down south, hitting them with the flex.
Oh.
I mean, it was like, yeah, it's kind of like one of the little instruments. I'm in the gym. I'm doing this. I'm working on. It's like, no, you're not. And then 3 months
later, habit for hard work.
Yeah, it's like it's all a show. I'm gonna show a whole bunch of videos about what I'm doing, what I'm really not doing. It's kind of here's what I compare it to. I'm gonna give a hard example. It's kind of like showing your mama you got an A on your spelling test, but you know you got this big ass F on your report card coming next Friday. That's what I compare it to. I'm going to show mama all my spelling tests. Mama made an A on the spelling test. Mama made an A on the spelling test because I know this big old F, this big old goose egg, this big old flag is coming on my report card in a couple of Fridays from now. So that way I can tell my mama, well, mama, you saw my spelling test. You saw it. Now your mama trying to have a conference with the teacher because the only thing you've been showing her is them damn spelling tests. You ain't been showing them all them F's you've been making in math.
But champ, that's the reason why I call Ben Simmons a heel. And the reason why heel applies with Ben Simmons is because coming out of college, what was Ben Simmons supposed to be? The projections of Ben Simmons coming out of college.
Number one overall pick.
But who?
Next LeBron.
Yes.
LeBron.
He was often compared to LeBron James. Plus, let's not forget, champ, the reason why he went to LSU, I think, was because of a family member, either his godfather or whoever. Plus, we knew he didn't take school seriously at LSU. Didn't he have like a 1.8 grade point average back at LSU?
Damn, I didn't know it was that bad.
Well, he didn't take school. Well, again, I mean, we knew that Ben Simmons was going to enter the NBA. We knew that Ben Simmons was going to. I mean, Ben Simmons coming out of college, he was 6'10". Yeah, he had a 1.8 GPA back at LSU. But my thing is with Ben Simmons, the reason why heel applies with Ben Simmons is because I don't think he truly loved basketball, champ, BRF, to be honest with you. I think he loved I think he didn't mind it, but he only liked it because of. All right, let me rephrase it. Ben Simmons didn't mind basketball because what it would land him: money, fame, attention. I don't think Ben Simmons truly cared enough about basketball, because if he did, he would have evolved. He would have gotten much better as a basketball player. Anytime, and the reason why broad applies is because, again, Ben Simmons spent most of his career in Philadelphia. And anytime, whenever Ben Simmons mentioned about the mental health issues, talk to Broad. He wasn't buying any of the mental health issues that Ben Simmons was applying at that time. You look at Ben Simmons, how the way he handled the situation in Philadelphia. They gave him a ton of money. They thought Ben Simmons, he's going to come into the off season, work on his game. We saw the videos of him working out, shooting the three, but it didn't materialize in the regular season. The postseason against your Atlanta Hawks, BRF, one particular play in which he's being guarded in the post by Danilo Gallinari. He goes past him, and who's in his way in the paint? Trae Young. Who they list
and he doesn't go up. He doesn't go up. You drill that in his face and he passes it off.
Because obviously, psychologically,
He didn't want to go to the free throw line.
He didn't want to go to the free throw line. He didn't want to shoot free throws. Because they knew once he had the ball in his possession, they were going to foul him and they were going to use the hack a Shaq. Then after that, Doc Rivers. Remember what he said? Do you think you could win a championship with Ben Simmons as your point guard? I don't know the answer to that question. Joel Embiid, the turning point, the play I just mentioned. You look at Ben Simmons, how he got himself out of that situation in Philadelphia. Remember when he had the cell phone in his pocket during the workout?
Yeah.
But the thing is with Ben Simmons as a heel is that I don't think he cared enough about basketball, how the way people had expectations of him, and he didn't live up to it. It seems like basketball is an afterthought to him. He didn't care enough about basketball. If he truly cared enough about basketball, he would have gotten much better as a basketball player and become the player we thought he could be. Then on top of that, the fashion, the outfits, everything else. It just seems like, come on, dude. We know you don't really care that much about basketball. All the videos of you shooting, we know it's just all for show. You're not fooling anyone. All you're doing is just wasting our time. We know what you're trying to do, Ben. You're trying to show that you really care about basketball, but you didn't. Now, did Ben Simmons had health issues along the way? Yes, with the back injury, other things, but I just don't think Ben Simmons truly cared enough about basketball. And Champ, I hate it. I mean, they don't they look at him as the example of the NBA of how the modern game is? Because when they look at Shaq and Charles Barkley, because they've been often critical of Ben Simmons.
Yeah, they look at him like you said, he loved being a celebrity more than he did. That downfall, people talk about the downfall of someone. You go from being a all-time from third team all NBA to a 3-time all-star to your defense being rookie of the year, to your defense being impeccable. I mean, defensively, you could clamp anybody, until you just not working on your game and you not just working on your craft. And look, how you do one thing is how you doing everything. I mean, how you do one thing is how you do everything. Hell, your grade point average was a 4.8. Damn, you must have wrote your damn name on the paper and turned it in. I mean, what the hell was that? But I don't know what you did. But I don't know. I don't know what to say about it.
You got the 1.8 GPA, the minimum requirement for eligibility at LSU during his first semester. However, he did not meet the 2.0 GPA requirement for the Wooden Award.
Again, you must have just wrote your name on the paper and then turned it the hell in, because I don't know what that was. I seen a guy get a zero. I seen a guy get a zero in the class for an entire semester because he didn't show up and his GPA didn't fall that low. But I digress. Like I said, you got to take things seriously. And like I said, how you do one thing is how you do everything. And if you're not able to do things in accordance to if you can't keep your damn grades up in order to get a damn award, what the hell makes you think you're going to be able to keep your body in shape and escalate your game enough to the point where you can do everything that you need to do? You can't even keep your damn grades up. And the thing is, it's not like NIL. Everybody knew you was going to be one and done. So you couldn't keep your damn grades up for 1 year for enough to get the Wooten Award when you was the most incredible player in college basketball. We all knew you was going to be a lottery pick.
Number one pick, presumptive choice.
Yes. And then you go out and you can't even keep your GPA up that high. Then you go and you love what the game brings you rather than doing the hard work. And like I said, and you can't even compare him to Shaq, because the thing is, even though Shaq, kind of was lackluster at times and was like, all right, whatever. The thing is, when he was on that floor, he played hard. And he showed you, hey, in 2006, in 2005, 2006, he showed you, hey, when it's time to perform, I'm going to be able to perform. Now, unfortunately, 2006, after he won that championship, was the beginning of the end. But for the most part, Shaq fulfilled his obligation to the game of basketball. when you talk about Ben Simmons, it's like, bro, all of these doggone YouTube videos, I'm shooting. And like I said, I'm doing this and working on my game. And like I said, I compare it to, like I said, you show your mama all your spelling tests from school, and you're not showing her your math test. And then when that big goose egg comes the very next week on report card day, the first thing you try to hide behind is those spelling tests, and that's what I compare it to.
But
And he
that's
didn't really want to do nothing.
but that's why I say heel champ, because the reason why heel, because at this point he's wasting everyone's time. And everyone had expectations for him, and they thought Ben Simmons was going to match it, but for whatever reason he didn't. And the reason why heel applies, because they wanted as bad for Ben Simmons as Ben Simmons wanted as bad for himself. And like I said, Ben Simmons, he's had opportunities to rectify his career. Okay, he gets traded to Brooklyn to pair with KD, Kyrie. You would have thought, okay, this is a great situation for me. I get to play with those types of guys who can shoot the basketball, score. I can worry about the passing, the playmaking, the defense. And it still didn't work out in Brooklyn. Now he's with the Clippers. And when they look at Ben Simmons at this point, damaged goods. Ben Simmons may not be the player he once was. He could still produce, come off the bench, things of that nature. But they just feel like with Ben Simmons, he doesn't care. He doesn't care about basketball. He's a talented player, but he doesn't care. We don't know how hard he's working. Yeah, I mean, he's shooting threes and all that other stuff, but how come we don't see it in the regular season or in the postseason? And how come we see him more at Met Galas? How come we see him at fashion events or anything else besides basketball? That's why he applies with Ben Simmons, because, again, there are people who are questioning his effort and motor. And remember, Champ, you and I and Casual, we had a conversation. Ben Simmons said, I'm ready to dominate. I'm ready to turn around my career. Even though I didn't believe it, I'm like, all right, Ben, okay, give us your this is your chance. Demonstrate, prove to why you can actually turn around your career. And still, it just feels like everything he said fell on deaf ears.
Basically.
BRF?
See, the reason why I want to call Ben Simmons a tweener here is because, so a lot of people did root for him to kind of really get on track and find his touch, just find an ability to shoot. Because I'm sorry, dude, there's no way you as a player should be able to jump and be as good a passer as, say, a LeBron James, but then you shoot like Chuck Hayes. I mean, just no, we can't be doing that. We cannot be doing that. And that was always just the biggest. That was always the biggest part of why Ben Simmons didn't fully translate into the All NBA, first or second team guy we thought he was going to. And it just came from the standpoint that he didn't shoot, but we rooted for him. You root for a guy like that because he has all the talent in the world to be one of the elite guys in the league, even if he wasn't the greatest shooter. I mean, look at Giannis. Giannis isn't the greatest outside shooter. He doesn't have the greatest perimeter shot, but he works on his craft every day to be the best player he could possibly be. And again, he was a finalist for the most valuable player award because that's just Giannis. That's who he is. He's not the greatest shooter, but he goes in and works on his craft to become the best player he could possibly be. He's a top 5 player in the world right now. Ben Simmons, if he did a little bit of that, he could have been a really, really good player, but he never. But yeah, it's like you make good points from the standpoint. It's like he didn't put like the full effort into like wanting to improve his offensive game. Like he didn't care. But I want to call him a tweener just from the standpoint he still had the talent there, and you rooted for him, and you wanted him to succeed because ultimately it's there and it could come out of him, but it just never came. It never came out. So I feel like from the standpoint of people actually rooted for him and wanted him to succeed, is why I really call him. Is why I called him a tweener, just because I think fans, NBA fans, wanted to see him fully evolve and become, the talent we thought he was going to. And whether it was just him not caring to get better or the injury setting him back, I mean, there were just too many things and too many factors there that didn't allow him to evolve and become the player we thought he was going to. So, but like I said, I feel like people rooted for him to succeed, and that's why I feel like he's a tweener, because there were like really good characteristics of about him, as far as like the way he played the game, as far as like his transition game, his defense, just like everything worked except half court offense. Like everything worked but half court offense when it comes from a standpoint of having to shoot the basketball. And it's like I get tired of looking forward to seeing the yearly preseason training regimen of Ben Simmons, because he's going to put up a bunch of jump shots, but it's not going to translate on the real, in the real thing in the NBA during the regular season. It's not gonna translate. So like the first couple of times he put him out, he's like, okay, yeah, he's gonna do something now, and after those, and he never did. It's like, okay, yeah, why do you keep posting these? What's the point? So he's a tweener just because I feel like people just wanted him to succeed. It's just a shame he didn't ultimately turn into you know saying next LeBron is like hard, because I don't think there's going to ever be another LeBron James. But still, just
If he could have been at least the next Freddie Hardaway, he would have did decent.
I would have been. That would have been. Or Draymond.
Yeah.
Could he be?
Yeah, like exactly. Like a Drake. Yeah, just being a Draymond Green. Like, okay, you're not asked to shoot much, but when you have to shoot, you can actually shoot the ball. Like Ben Simmons is gonna go down as one of the biggest what ifs in the history of the NBA, because what if he really honed his craft and really turned himself into the all world level player we thought he was going to be, because the talent's there. Like, what if he really truly worked on himself on the basketball court? What could he have become? I think Ben Simmons is one of the biggest what ifs ever in the NBA. But like I said, I just think people wanted him to succeed. So, excuse me. That's why I call him a tweener. That's why I call him a tweener.
I still go with Hill only because, again, Ben Simmons is just giving the impression that I just don't really like basketball that much. I just love what basketball can offer me and give me. And it's just frustrating because we want it for him, but apparently to me, it just seems like he doesn't want it for himself. So that's the reason. But I'll give you another babyface or heel. Jeff, I'm sorry, not him. Jay Cutler. I think he's a heel.
Yeah, he's a heel for me too. There's no likable characteristics about Jay Cutler. There just isn't.
Remember, he is the younger version of Jeff George. Y'all know Jeff George.
Yeah. The thing is, Devin Hester and Brandon Marshall said that he was one of the most smartest players that you ever want to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's one of the most smartest players, but he just so.
And where did he go to school?
He went to Vanderbilt.
He went to Vanderbilt. Yeah, he's one of the smartest players you ever want to see, as far as. But he said he just had a way with the players that it just rubbed everybody the wrong way. And like I said, I think Warren Moon gave this analogy. He was like, people always criticize, because people used to criticize Cam Newton a lot early in his career about how passionate he was. He said, well, you remember Warren Moon was Cam Newton's advisor for his first couple of years and when he was entering the draft. He said, would you rather have Cam Newton showing how passionate he is and hating to lose, or would you rather have him acting like Jay Cutler? Because to me, it doesn't seem like Jay Cutler gives a damn about what happens during the game, as long as he gets to cash that check. And he always had this very, very lackluster type of attitude. I mean, I never forget the Denver Broncos game when he finally got traded to Chicago, and Chicago came to town, and everybody, all the Denver Broncos fans, was dressed like babies in baby diapers and had little pacifiers in their mouths and stuff like that because they was impersonating how much of a crybaby that Jay Cutler was. And not to mention, the NFC Championship, where people were talking about the injury that nobody saw, and luckily for him, Brian Urlacher said, I believe him and things of that nature, but for them to lose 10-6 and you not generate any offense and you over there on the bike, doing whatever is kind of asinine within itself. Like I said, he was kind of, very, very. He was not a likable guy. It was just like you wanted him to see succeed, but he was just a basket case within the league. He was just I don't know what it was about Jay Cutler. He was just a guy with a bad attitude that could have had the world. He just could have had it. He's a big what if story because in Denver, after Shanahan left, and which I don't blame you for not succeeding under Josh McDaniels. I don't blame you for that. But the year before, you had a huge collapse. You had two of the biggest collapses in the end of the season in history. You went not, you was 7-5 to start the season. Down the stretch, you won one game. And the Los Angeles Chargers, who were then the San Diego Chargers, they came from 4-7 in order to steal the division from you. They went on a 4-1 game winning streak to recapture that division when you started off that season 7-5. Then you go to Chicago.
Let's not forget the NFC Championship game.
Yeah, NFC Championship game. You over there on the sideline. Nobody really saw an injury, but and they lost 10-6. Look, people might say, well, NFC Championship. Keep this in mind when you talk about a conference championship game. Phillip Rivers once had secret surgery and came back and played against the undefeated New England Patriots. That's how important that game was to him. That's how important it was. Jay Cutler always struck me as a guy who, like I said, much like Ben Simmons, except he got a lot more passes. I mean, they wanted to treat him like the media wanted to treat this guy like Brett Favre so bad, but he didn't have the talent, nor he had
the personality.
He didn't have the
personality.
He didn't have the personality. He didn't have the talent. He didn't have the wherewithal, and he didn't have the winning record in order to be a Brett Favre. Because they always tried to label him a riverboat gambler, just like Brett Favre. This dude did not have the talent. He didn't have the wherewithal. He didn't have the mental capacity in order to do it. He was just one of those guys who was the typical butthole that was playing quarterback position, and you hated to see him. And every time he got hit, you loved to see it. Even when Sue used to hit him, people behind the scenes used to really be saying, "Hey, that's Jay Cutler," So,
and you remember when the Bears idiotically gave Jay Cutler back in 2014 a 7-year, $120-something million contract, champ?
Yeah, the thing was this. I don't know why that this guy, if it would have been, what kills me about the NFL, if the NFL is so quick to give these mediocre quarterbacks with bad attitudes these big, huge contracts and comparing them to guys and putting them in conversations that they ain't got no business being in. And he never struck, and he always looked. But that dude looked like he was my size out there playing quarterback position. But they talk about conditioning. This dude never looked like he was in shape playing the game of football. Ever. He doesn't.
He does no, I'm laughing, Champ, because I remember when the Miami Dolphins, when they signed him back in 2017, he said, good thing about me is that I play quarterback, so I don't need to be in great cardiovascular shape.
Exactly. So yeah, you didn't. I mean, like I said, you cheated the game in so many levels, bro. You can almost be attributed to the reason why one of the best receivers that we ever saw during the 2010. You are one of the main reasons why Brandon Marshall never got to see the playoff. You were one of the main reasons. And you were not likable. Nobody liked you in the locker room. And yet you got chance after chance, much like Jeff George did, and you did nothing with those opportunities. You showed flashes of greatness, but when it mattered the most, you were just another very, very. If it wasn't for certain bright spots within your career, like you making the Pro Bowl and stuff like that, if it wasn't for certain bright spots in your career, you would very well have been labeled a bust.
Well, thank God for him. I mean, 12 years in the NFL. I'm not gonna say he's a bust champ, but in my opinion, he's a disappointment because Jay Cutler coming out of Vanderbilt, I liked him. Like I liked his athleticism. I liked his big arm. He could fit the West Coast offense. Jay Cutler just never cared. Blase, apathetic, just didn't seem interested whether if they won or lost games. The reason why I say heel, kind of like with Ben Simmons, champ, Jay Cutler's been accused of stealing money.
2 winning seasons in your entire career as a quarterback. 2 winning seasons, 1 postseason appearance.
And only
1.
one Pro Bowl appearance.
And 1 Pro Bowl appearance. You did all of that, and yet teams kept giving you chance after chance after chance. Funny thing about your Denver career, you wasn't there but 3. You wasn't in Denver but 3 years after you got drafted 11 overall.
Yep.
And like I said, I don't blame that all on him. I blame some of that on that buffoon Josh McDaniels because he was dumb.
Before Mike Shanahan was his head coach, and Mike Shanahan wanted to take a shot at Jay Cutler, and then in 2009, they hired Josh McDaniels to become the head coach. After moving on from Mike Shanahan, Jay Cutler, shout out to Flemlow Raps. Go check him out on YouTube. He talked about the story in which Jay Cutler was like, okay, fine, Josh McDaniels is there, but can you still keep the people from Shanahan? But they hired Josh McDaniels. They allowed Josh McDaniels to hire the type of people that Josh McDaniels wanted, which is what led Jay Cutler to getting traded.
Yeah. But like I said, I don't blame you for that Denver run, but that entire Chicago run, you had 2 winning seasons in your entire career. Yet you made almost $200 million. That is a flat out shame. And like I said, that's another indictment on the NFL for giving mediocre, bad attitude quarterbacks a lot of money. And you see this dude don't care about the game, yet y'all keep taking a chance on him, much like you did with Jeff George.
Well, in Jay Cutler's career, he earned approximately a little over $122 million.
Okay.
So Jay Cutler, I'm not going to say bust, but I will say he was a major disappointment because I had a lot of expectations from him out of Vanderbilt. If his talent matched, if his attitude matched his talent, Jay Cutler would be a perennial Pro Bowl quarterback. And champ, although I disagree with you with Tim Tebow being a babyface, I can understand your argument as to why. If Tim Tebow had the talent to match his attitude, personality, you don't think that Tim Tebow would be a perennial Pro Bowl quarterback?
Yes.
Imagine if Tim Tebow had the talent like Jay Cutler.
Yes. If he would have had that, if you could have gave Tim Tebow Jay Cutler's talent, his arm talent, his smarts, and his ability to navigate offense, to throw the deep ball, to throw across the middle in order to just be in control. If you would have gave Tim Tebow that, then guess what? We'd be talking about Tim Tebow as one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. In fact, like I said, he made the Pro Bowl and everything just on the talent that he had alone. Led his team to a playoff on limited talent at best.
And ironically, Tim Tebow and Jay Cutler only have one playoff game each.
Exactly. And and Jay Cutler was the starter for years. So hey, you are a heel not just because of your attitude, but because not just because you just stole money, but because a lot of the times you had an opportunity in order to be your best and you were not. So I don't feel sorry for you.
BRF.
You know how I feel about Jay Cutler. He's one of the most overrated players in the history of the league. Just he's a heel. Like there are no likable characteristics about Jay Cutler. Like it's like how how can you be that talented and just be so nonchalant with how you cared about your teammates, you cared about winning, just like it was just like I don't know, like he thought like I guess he thought everything was just gonna come easy to him and it didn't. And it's almost like the people that were around him kind of paid for that because even though he was a good quarterback, don't get me wrong, he put up good numbers the time he played. He could have been so much more than that. But then when you look at the intangibles and everything, it was like there's nothing there. You can't root for a player like Jay Cutler. He makes it hard for you to root for him because it's like just Jake and he has one of those punchable faces too. It's bad saying that, I know, but he did. He had one of them he had one of them faces. You just like if you saw him, you wanted to like you really wanted to punch him in the face. Like he just had one of them faces. Like there's just nothing to like about Jay Cutler, regardless of how talented he was. He's a waste. He's one of the biggest waste of God given talent I have ever seen in any level of sports. He is one of the biggest waste of talents ever because if he had the mindset to go with his arm skill, he would have been perennial top 10 quarterback, perennial contender for all pros, perennial just beating any and everybody. He could have been up there with some of the best. And the mindset just never got up to where the talent was. And like he's one of the biggest waste of talent I have ever seen. He is a heel. There's nothing to like about him. There's no beacon of light with Jay Cutler. He is just if you are trying to play at the quarterback position and you want to play at the highest level to everybody, to the young guys out there, if you want to play the quarterback position, do not have a Jay Cutler mindset or you will not succeed. Do not have a Jay Cutler mindset. If you have his talent, do not have his mindset. You will not get anywhere because he's just he's a waste of God-given talent. Shouldn't even have to go to that route. We should be talking about him up there as one of the greats of this generation. Instead, he's like, in my opinion, the biggest waste of talent of this generation at the quarterback position.
All right, guys. Last one. Stephen A. Smith. I'm going to go heel. I'm sorry. There's no other way to look at it with Stephen A. Smith. I respect and admire his hard work for him to get to this point. Writing for the Philadelphia Inquirer, being a sports reporter, working for ESPN, Fox, everything else. He's doing amazing things, rightfully so, deserving of that big time contract with ESPN. My problem with Stephen A. Smith, there have been times I think he has gone too far. The LeBron situation. Although I did not like the fact that LeBron confronted him publicly, I felt like if you wanted to do that privately. But hey, champ, BRF, you told me before, like any father in that situation, they would have done the exact thing for their son. The other problem I have with Stephen A. Smith is when he lied about LeBron not attending Kobe Bryant's memorial, which that's a lie. The other problem that I have with Stephen A. Smith, he is responsible for Max Kellerman's departure of First Take. And I like Max Kellerman a lot. And Max Kellerman, I haven't seen anything from him. I'm surprised that he's not on TV, radio, or anything. It's like, is Max Kellerman like ostracized? And nowadays, he's become a target for athletes, whether current or former. Look no further than one Terrell Owens. Do you remember ESPN First Take in that Colin Kaepernick situation when they were discussing the Colin Kaepernick workout? And T.O. literally said it, I'm in the streets. Max almost seems blacker than you. And the fact that, and I'm looking at Max Kellerman's reaction, I'm like, oh my fucking God, did he just say that on the air? So, I mean, and look, there's a lot of other things with Stephen A. Smith. I didn't like the way he talked about Shohei Ohtani. Remember what he said about Shohei Ohtani?
Yeah,
He didn't speak enough English. He didn't speak enough English to be the face of the league.
Right. And my thing is with Stephen A. Smith, there are a lot of times he puts his foot in his mouth. Now, if you're asking me personally, he'd be a babyface if he was compared to a Jason Whitlock. Because even on your worst day, it is hard to be someone like a Jason Whitlock. Champ, you said it. Your worst fear, your nightmare is of all things is to be compared to Jason Whitlock.
That is I swear before my God, before I sit here, I would rather quit and never make content ever again to be compared to Whitlock. I would never make a podcast again. I would never be on before I ever get prepared to that. Because the thing is that it's just we already covered that. But for Stephen A., hey, there's a man down here in Columbus, Georgia, who raised me. And he always told me one thing: be careful who you hate, because it just might become who you despise. Remember all that hate he spewed towards Jason Whitlock? You kind of becoming him lately, don't you think?
Yeah. I mean, now even Stephen A. Smith, even Donald Trump even talked about Stephen A. Smith thinking he would be good for president.
The thing is, I don't mind you about aspirations because we've seen a lot of guys.
I don't mind. I don't mind the aspirations part, Chip. But here's my thing with Stephen A. Smith. Why I want to continue to go a little bit more, man.
My bad.
No, that's all good. Don't worry about it, and don't worry. You're not gonna be compared to Jason Whitlock. We still want you to continue doing your content creation and your journalism. I just think with Stephen A. Smith, it's really hard to like him nowadays. Yeah, we admire your hard work. As you talk about pound the pavement, I said you would be a babyface or a tweener if you would be compared to someone like a Jason Whitlock. But in totality, it's really hard to really see you as a babyface or a tweener because of the positions. And also, champ, one more. You have not only argued, but you have advocated Kyrie Irving as a babyface.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Stephen A. Smith did say that he wanted Kyrie Irving to retire.
Yes, he did.
He thought Kyrie Irving should retire. And remember, with the whole vaccination situation, Jay Williams of ESPN called out Stephen A. Smith and said, "You know what, Stephen A., you got on Kyrie Irving by not getting the vaccine. How come you're not holding the same energy when it came to Aaron Rodgers?"
Yeah, he was a fan of Aaron Rodgers. To be honest with you, he was always calling him the bad man. And like I said earlier, and I'll just leave it at that. Be careful who you judge because you end up becoming who you hate. Because the thing is, if you ever notice now, a lot of athletes, much like with Jason Whitlock, are hating Stephen A. Smith, whereas he used to be a man of the people. Draymond Green even called him out. Draymond Green, a lot of other players are calling him out. I mean, you know, you going on the podcast talking about how weak somebody is because they came and confronted you about their son. And the funny thing about this, I didn't find out this recently, Stephen, that you have kids.
He does.
You have children. So for you to call out somebody and say it was weak when you have children, it's kind of like, bro, what are you? And then come on, some I would have swung on somebody. What the hell was you gonna do? Swing a sandwich at him because you wouldn't have won the fight. You was gonna get pulverized. Hell, I'm a former boxer. I'm not finna walk up on LeBron James. Just being real. Prime undisputed champ is not gonna walk up on LeBron James. And I'm a boxer. I know 3 forms of martial arts. So I'm not going there. So the thing is this: you calling people weak, you're a villain in the media now. You no longer, although you're the highest paid, you no longer have that pool that you had with players that you had at one point. At one point, when guys wanted to do interviews, including Kobe Bryant, the late great Kobe Bryant. Remember, when guys wanted to do interviews for the press and stuff like that, especially when they had just got through recovery from a hard time, they went to Stephen A. Smith. Remember, quite frankly, when he did the interview with Allen Iverson, remember when, after everything happened with Kobe, how he was talking to Kobe about how he wanted to win a championship? You used to be a man of the people. And like I said, let's not take the easy way out, if you get what I'm saying. I'm talking about a person who can relate to athletes. Now it's all about these hot takes that you have. Now it's all about you being a spectacle. Now it's no longer about being a responsible journalist. You have to be responsible and realize the power that you wield as a journalist. And I think that this has I think he's lost sight of that at a certain point. But like I said, be careful who you judge, because now you're becoming a villain, much like Whitlock is. Let's just be honest with you. You're becoming that villain. Players cannot stand to talk to you anymore. There used to be a time where players loved to talk to you. Now players can't stand to talk to you anymore. I mean, a lot of people within the culture, Willie D from the Ghetto Boys talks about you in a certain way. Him and Scarface. So, and not to mention some of the things that you said about the tryout with the Kaepernick situation, which I don't blame you for a certain point in that one, because, for everything to get changed up at the last minute, kind of crazy. But nevertheless, he had to sign waivers and things of that nature. I don't know. I wasn't there. But there's been a lot of stuff that he's did where, like I said, you've judged people for being like that. Now you're becoming that. And it's starting to get ridiculous at a certain point. We need you to be the journalist that you were, where it was all about being a journalist, where it was all about the facts, where it was all about basketball, where it was all about it was all about what was going on the court, and not all of this hot takes and making a spectacle of yourself. Granted, in the news journalists, in the journalism field, in sports journalism, you have to have a little bit of a personality, because nobody's going to want to watch you if you sit there and do monotone the entire time. But learn how to put that stuff into perspective. Learn who you are. And the thing is, a lot of these stuff that's going on with him, you're making a spectacle of yourself rather than being the respected journalist we used to know and love back in the early 2000s and things of that nature. Granted, I'm proud to say, hey, he is highest paid at ESPN, him being in soap operas, him being on Law and Order, all of that. That is something that you could aspire to, and you can tell your kids, look, you ain't got to be just an athlete. You can be a journalist. Look what Stephen A. is doing. Even, New Jersey's own Chris Broussard. He's one of the examples that you can show somebody that you say, hey, it ain't got to be just a ball player. You can make it in the media. that part I admire about it because hey, you got a better chance of being a Stephen A. Smith than you do have being a Dwayne Wade or the next LeBron James. Granted, yeah, I like that. But the irresponsible journalism, to make it a spectacle of yourself, to make it to where nobody wants to listen to you, and you're becoming you're doing a lot of unlikable things. It's kind of getting ridiculous at a certain point, and you need to get back to basics.
I still believe he's a babyface tweener compared to a Whitlock.
Yeah, it hasn't gotten that out of control, but it's getting it.
It's getting there, but I did kind of like the fact how he got after Jason Whitlock, especially because remember, champ, the reason why Jason Whitlock was never on ESPN with Stephen A. Smith because it was in Stephen A.'s contract that he would never work with Jason Whitlock.
Yeah, because
no wonder why you wouldn't see him on First Take.
Yeah. And yeah, but the thing is, like I said, be careful who you judge because the thing is, you're doing stuff that mimics that type of behavior.
No, I agree. I agree with you, champ. But that's the reason why I call him a heel. And just look at all the other examples. And with Kyrie Irving, how the way he was critical of Kyrie Irving, how the way he, and also champ integrity, which is what we're seeing with journalists a lot of days. Brian Windhorst, when that situation with LeBron, he handled it perfectly. LeBron doesn't have to owe me anything. I've covered LeBron since what, high school, grade school, or whatever. Brian Windhorst handled the situation well. Stephen A, on the other hand, didn't. And I when we become bigger than what we are, we forgot. It seems like to me, Stephen A has forgotten. He lost track or has forgotten who he was. Because when we get to a certain point in life, we forgot where we were or where we came from.
Yeah.
And I think his ego's gotten a little too big at times. That's just me.
And let's not forget the whole situation, even with him doing college football. Remember when, Ryan Day ended up going to the college football playoff after he won the conference championship. Everybody asked him, do we owe Ryan? We don't owe Ryan any apology. This is what you're supposed to do. No. You was lobbying to get that damn man fired when he lost against Michigan. You was lobbying for him to get fired, saying he deserves to get fired. So guess what? Now that he's gone on and made a deep college football, and this was after the Oregon game when they just basically tore him out the frame. This was after the Oregon game. So, and they was asking, do we owe him an apology? Well, that's what you're supposed to do. No, you was calling for him to get fired. So guess what? Yes, you owe him an apology. Don't get so caught up in your ways where you're above reproach as far as news media is concerned.
BRF.
Stephen A. See, the thing is with Stephen A, like he does still speak on. Well, the good thing about Stephen A, he does speak on topics, and he does kind of share a viewpoint of like, standing for like certain talking points, as far as like human rights in politics and stuff like that. I think for me, he is a tweener because although he is on the right side of a lot of things as far as like what you support, who you stand up with, and all that other stuff, some of the things that he has done, like, has definitely left a lot to be desired. And yeah, like you going back to that LeBron, you go back to the LeBron incident, even though LeBron could have did better as far as like getting him off the court, doing that in a private setting, so everybody's not looking at you directly and stuff like that. With Stephen A, it's like like y'all pretty much said, it's like a hot take factor. Like instead of like wanting to like have the like healthy debates and talk about things going on in sports and wanting to just actually really like cover the game, because his the origin story with him is being a journalist, covering the game. Like he was the one that was like he like he was the one basically covering Allen Iverson pretty much when Allen Iverson was in Philly. That was him. That was him. That was pretty much him. Like he kind of is to AI in Philly what Brian Windhorst, is to LeBron James when it comes to just studying that guy and being around that guy and kind of knowing the ins and outs and knowing what's going on, being that first guy that he could call and talk to when he wants to have an interview, something's going on and he wants to get something off his chest. For Allen Iverson, for the longest time, it was Stephen A. Smith. And so you would think with his origin story, you hope he has appreciation and, wanting to do stuff. And especially with him, losing because, I hate to bring it up because, he lost his mom. He lost his mom. And, you should, a humbling moment should come from a situation like that. Like, to not taking life for granted, appreciating. I'm not saying he don't, but just like some of the things that he's done in the media, like in news as of late, it's like you kind of take a chill pill, relax a little bit. Some of the stuff you've done, you ain't got no business doing because at the end of the day, don't get me wrong, you might be making ESPN a lot of money with the First Take Show and all that, but don't think they won't replace you. They've replaced people before, and they'll do it again. They're not really worried about stuff like that because they're an entity in their own right. They'll get whoever they want to get and keep pushing. So, but you would think with his situation and adversity that he's faced, you would think he wouldn't go out there and almost kind of instigate certain situations. But like I said, I call him a tweener though because I do feel like he's on the right side of history as far as things that are going on in the world and all that. So even though he definitely has had his heelish moments, I do look at Stephen A as someone that will, stand up for the right things. He just kind of, in terms of sports takes and debates and all this stuff, he needs to get a grip on some of that. But I am gonna call him a tweener.
I still get the shivers anytime whenever Terrell Owens, when he went on First Take and he said that on the air. That was
I remember
insane.
that too.
A lawsuit came out of that as well. So
that was, for him to say that on the air, and just look at Max Kellerman's reaction. That was crazy. But man, again, all of us, we admire Stephen A. Smith's work as a journalist.
mm-hmm.
And look, to your point, Champ, he's proven he's more than just a journalist. He can act, he can do a lot of things, versatility, and that's great. The problem is that ever since he's gotten that big, he's forgotten what it took in order for him to get to where he is. And I think he has to have more integrity as a journalist. And it's become that difficult for him to cultivate relationships with the players nowadays. Yeah. Because, again, they don't want to spend time talking to him like they did in the past. Not just present, former as well. So